It's November 4th, 2021, the beautiful city of the Villages in Florida. My name is Jong-woo Han. I am the president of Korean War Legacy Foundation, which has more than 1,500 of Korean interviews, Korean War veterans interview, not just from the United States, but also other 21 countries that participate in the Korean War. It's the biggest in the world. And we are doing this to commemorate the special occasion of the 70th anniversary of the breakout of the Korean War, supported by the MPVA, Ministry of Patriots and Veterans Affairs, which supported your travel from here to Korea in 2008, right?
Yeah.
Yes. And we are doing this to preserve your memory because it's been a long time already. But at the same time, we want to honor your service and sacrifice. And also, we want to educate our young generation about the war that you fought for and its legacy, which is South Korea's simultaneous economic development and democratization. Beautiful outcome came out of your service. Mm-hmm. So this interview will be made into curricular resources for the classroom when they talk about the Korean War. That's why we are doing this. It's my great pleasure to meet you, sir, and thank you for coming. And you came with a beautiful wife, Sharon, right?
Yeah.
Correct.
So I will ask you to join your husband at the later of this interview about the Korea that you saw in 2008. Please introduce yourself. What is your name?
William A. Duffy.
Can you spell it?
Williamaduffy.
What is the A stand for? What is the middle full name?
Aloysius.
Could you spell it?
Aloysius.
S-I-U-S?
Yes.
A-L-O-Y-S-I-U-S.
Right.
What is the ethnic origin of that name?
Irish.
Irish. What is your birthday, sir?
6/14/32.
So you are now 89.
Yes.
Where is your wrinkle?
I got many of them.
I don't see them much. Huh?
He looks great.
Yeah.
What's going on? What is the secret?
I wish I knew.
You drink whiskey every day.
Yes, a nice drink.
That's the key, right?
Yep.
Where were you born?
St. Louis, Missouri.
Ah, very nice city, right?
Yes.
Tell me about your family background when you were growing up. Your siblings, your parents, and so on.
Well, I was born during the Depression, so we were poor, but everybody I knew was the same, so you didn't know anything. But worked hard, raised a family, and...
Was your father a farmer or what?
No. He was a guard at a defense plant.
Oh. And so you mentioned about the Great Depression, 1929.
Yeah.
And you born in 32.
Right.
How did you feel any about it?
Everybody I knew was in the same boat, so it didn't know any difference.
Mm-hmm. Was it hard to live that period?
Yes. I mean, nobody I knew had anything. So.
Mm-hmm. How many siblings did you have at the time?
I had a brother and two sisters, all older. I was the youngest of the group.
You are the youngest?
The youngest.
So tell me about the school you went through there in St. Louis?
In St. Louis. I went to Catholic grade school and public high school.
High school, what is the name?
Normandy.
Could you spell it?
Normandy.
N-O-R-M-A-N.
Normandy.
Normandy. Yeah. High school?
High school.
When did you graduate?
1950.
Oh, the year that the Korean War broke out?
Yes.
Now, I have this question. Did you learn anything about Korea from the school at the time?
At the time?
Yep.
No.
Nothing they talk about Korea?
Nothing, had nothing about it.
Huh. But now you are the Korean War veteran, right?
Yes.
Why do you think it happened like that? You
I,
didn't know?
I have no idea. It,
Okay.
but it just, when the Korean War broke out, after a few months, my buddy and I went down to join.
You were not afraid?
At 17, 18 years old, I mean, who fears anything?
You were idiot.
Yeah,
You went to the war.
right?
You might have been killed.
I could have been.
You enlisted,
I
right?
enlisted.
Why Marine?
I always wanted to be a Marine.
Why?
I had an uncle from World War I who has been in the Marines, and I just, from as long as I can remember, I wanted to be a Marine.
That's it.
Yeah.
You're born to be a Marine. So when did you enlist? Do you remember the date?
I was in March, and
51?
51,
Yeah.
the 26th of March, and I was in Korea that December,
But where did you go to boot camp?
San Diego.
Boot camp in San Diego?
San Diego.
Not Paris Island?
No,
Okay.
in fact, when I was a squad leader in Korea, all my squad had gone through Paris, Ireland. I was the only one that went through Dago, and they used to always kid me about where my sunglasses were.
So how was it being in the boot camp in San Diego of the Marine Corps?
Boot camp was very different. I mean, very rude awakening. Very hard.
Like what? Give me the detail. How hard was it?
Well, you were up like sometimes at 3 in the morning, out running the drill field, just everything to make you tougher, to weed out, and just one of the hardest things I ever went through was boot camp. But
you survived.
yes,
Did you like it?
when I look back on it, I did. But at the time,
You hated it.
I mean, anyone who would have not taken a get out card is a liar. I mean, boot camp was hell, and
But that made you strong.
I figure it did make us strong. And
So when did you leave for Korea?
we left at the end of November. We're on a World War I transport. I always see in the movie about the big convoys and that going. We were all by ourselves out there. And
Do you remember the name of the ship?
it was there was either Wiggle or General Pope. Those were the two. One was going and one was coming back. And I'm not sure which.
Yeah.
But it was the 15th draft.
Yeah. So did you get some education about Korea because you didn't know anything about Korea before? And when you left Korea, did Marine educate you about Korea, where it is and so on? History or anything?
Nothing.
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 Did you know that you are going to go to war?
Yes.
Were you not afraid?
Not really.
Not really.
Of
So,
course, like I say, at 18 years old, you're
so where did you departed from?
San Diego.
San Diego.
Yeah.
And you went to Japan or directly to Korea?
Directly to Korea. No, we stopped in Japan. And we unloaded. And they put us on LSTs and brought us to the east coast of Korea. And the Army said the Navy was supposed to make arrangements, and the Navy said the Army was, so we waited ashore in December. And the grade is it doesn't drop off. So they could only get the LSTs in so far. but then they put us on trucks.
Where did you land? Do you remember?
The East Coast.
Wonsan?
There was no port or anything.
Pohang? Where? 38 parallel?
It was below the 38th.
Below 38
Yeah.
parallel. Is it south or in the middle?
It was.
Busan?
It took us 4 hours on trucks to get from where we were to the lines.
To the lines.
Yeah.
So, Daegu? No.
I
You don't-
I never heard the name of it.
Uh-huh.
I mean, it was nighttime and something totally new.
Okay. What was your unit? First division?
Our unit was, we were Dog Company, 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines, 1st Marine Division,
Second battalion and what?
5th Marines,
Okay.
1st Marine Division.
You mean the 5th Marine
Regiment.
Regiment. Okay. What is your specialty?
Infantry, rifleman.
Rifleman.
Yeah, I was the first month I was a rifleman. Second month I was a fire team leader. The squad was made up of 3 fire teams, and you had 3 men under you.
Yep.
And then after 2 months I was a squad leader. I had 12 men under me.
By the way, you have a water right there, so if you want to,
Okay.
please. And Sharon, there are more waters there too. Okay. Right. So you arrived in somewhere in between Busan and 38 parallel. I never
Yeah.
heard about it, so I want to find that out. But anyway, from there you took a truck to where?
They brought trucks up to our battalion.
Where was it?
There again, it was just a place in the middle of the mountains. We drove through what they called Artillery Valley, where most of our artillery was, and then they brought us up, and we ended up on Hill 812.
Hill 812.
812.
Yep.
There, it went up to a larger mountain that the Chinese had, the North Koreans. We called it Taedoksan.
Taegapsan?
Taedoksan.
Taegaksan.
I don't know if that's a real name of it or just something that somebody named it.
Yep.
But 812 was on the last push. 812 was as far as they got. There was a ridge like on top, and there was an enormous piece of boulder, granite or something. And we were on one side of it, and the Chinese, North Korean were on the other side.
I see. And
Coldest place in the world. I was told it's gotten down to 50 below.
And tell me about the battle experience there in the Hill 812.
812. 812 was mostly sniping back and forth, or mortars, or artillery. And we would take patrols. One day you have patrol. The next day you would go down to the bottom of the hill and carry sea rations or munitions or water up to the top. And water was very hard to get, very precious. And then the third day you would work on improving your foxhole, in fact, I was in one, and when it thawed out, it melted. The sandbags were full of snow. Yeah.
So does this name called Inje, does that ring the bell to you?
Yeah, it does.
Inje, right?
Yeah.
That's where that 812, Hill 812 was located.
Okay.
Okay? Right. And so that the 5th Marine Regiment was there.
Right.
Okay.
And we stayed on the East Coast until sometime in the spring.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the South Korean Army replaced us. And we went on trucks to the center part of Korea by where Panmunjom was, the peace talks.
Yep.
And we were in that area the rest of the time. A lot of outpost fighting. For a while we called it OP1, or Suicide Hill. It was by the peace talks. And if anything happened while the delegates were there, we were to move through and secure the area. And they had some tanks and trucks around there that they would take the delegates back to the line and then come back for us. So we used to call it Suicide Hill.
Huh.
But it was kind of strange. You'd be there and maybe you'd get a shower once or twice every 2 weeks or so, and you'd see the delegates come in these shiny cars and they would come out, and some in white uniforms and just all spiffy.
Yep.
And from our position, we could see the North Koreans and the Chinese coming in, plus the Allies.
Mm.
But as usual, the UN put an extra. There was an area around the peace talks that was a no-fire zone,
Mm-hmm.
and the UN put another 100 yards around it, which we were in that area, but we couldn't fire at the Chinese because it would have ended up in the peace talks. But the Chinese could fire at us because we were in the other perimeter. But and then the rest of the time we were on patrols, ambush, and raids.
Any episode you still remember and bothering you and appearing in your nightmare? Anything? Detail. Give me the detail.
My very worst one was
Yeah.
we had come back into reserve, and we were supposed to be in a quiet area. And I had made sergeant, which is a little over, I'm not even sure I had a year. And so the lieutenant decided I should go back to division and go through NCO school, a week school. So they sent me back there, and it was like two different worlds. I mean, back there, when I got in there, first thing they did was have me get rid of my uniform, which was dungarees, gave me a shower. They had barber place there. Had
So like
almost new clothes. Normally you'd go through a shower and pick up wherever clothes fit you. Might have anybody's name on it. But in division it was all different. It was like being back in the States. And they had real food, not just sea rations and that. So some of the men back there I knew from earlier, and so they took me over to, they even have a place where you could get a beer, a cold beer. And we had a great dinner that night, not sea rations, real food. And when I got back to the tent I was in, there was a corporal there waiting. And he said, Lieutenant McLean would like to your presence. You know, now Lieutenant McLean had been our platoon leader at one time. So he took me over to his tent, and there was another officer who I can't remember his name, but he had been with us for a while too. And the first thing, Lieutenant McLean poured some whiskey in a canteen cup and said, "Here, have a drink." Now, officers don't give sergeants drinks. I knew something was wrong.
Huh.
And I asked him, I said, is something wrong with my parents? Because they weren't in good health.
Oh.
And he said, no. And he said, have another drink, you know. And I said, sir, something's wrong. He said, your squad got wiped out.
Oh.
I said, but we were in a quiet area. He said, well, they pulled them out to go on a raid, and they ran into an ambush and were wiped out.
Oh.
So instead of going to NCO school, all of my record says I did, I was on a truck back to our company, and there were 2 men out of the 12 men in my squad who were there, and they had small wounds. After a while, 2 or 3 more came back, but it was totally different. I mean, because you knew more about them than you did about your own family. And after that, when we got new replacements, you really didn't want to hear everything about them. When you look back, I guess they felt bad because we didn't want to hear their stories.
Yeah.
We don't. But that was a worst day of my life. So, and I wasn't even there. But then the rest of the time was patrols and ambush and that.
How close were you with the enemies, to the enemies?
All at different times, you might be like 300-400 yards.
That's it?
Especially if you were on we had a lot of outposts, and you'd be on the outpost. Now, you know, from the main line, it may be a much longer distance. But,
So sometimes you were able to see the enemy.
yes,
Yes.
yeah, and bad thing they could see you too. But we went out on a platoon-size patrol one time, and we ran into an ambush, and we got separated. Part of the platoon was with the lieutenant, and part of it was with me. So I took over what was left of our group, rounded up all the wounded and everybody, and accounted for as many as we could. And we fought our way back to our lines. One of my men, Dooley, we got trapped in one area, and he jumped up and knocked out a Chinese machine gun so we could get out. And we brought all the men back safely to the lines. He had been I put him up for the Navy Cross, but since he wasn't wounded, he got the Silver Star. And our lieutenant put me up for a Silver Star, but since I wasn't wounded,
You was wounded.
I was not wounded.
Not wounded.
I got the Bronze Star with V for Valor. But, and the rest of the time, in November, we were supposed to leave. So I had turned my platoon over, my squad over to another sergeant, and getting ready to leave. And then they came back and they said that, no, you won't be going home. The boys, they're going to let the men have Christmas at home before they come over. And it was an election year. And that's when I found out the power of the Mothers of America, because apparently we all wrote home we weren't coming home. And they must have jumped all over their congressmen and that. So I was given my squad back, and we came back in from an all-night patrol. And Dyer was there waiting for us, and he said, "Get your stuff, we're going home." So we got that. We cut behind us in the lines was a minefield, but we knew how to get through it. We cut through it down to where the trucks were, and our lieutenant was there, and the truck driver kept saying, "Sir, I have to leave." And he said, "You're not leaving without my men." So we were the last truck into battalion, last one in the regiment, the last one in the division. But the long short of it, I walked into my parents' house at 7 o'clock on Christmas Eve, and nobody knew I was coming home. Everything was so rush. And
You mean 52, right?
yes,
You left Korea when?
we left Korea, and it was probably the first part of December, the latter part of November.
And where did you departed from?
We departed from Incheon.
Incheon, by the boat.
Yes,
And you returned to your father's home, your home, Christmas Eve of 1952.
yes,
And nobody knew.
no,
Must have been a big surprise to your parents.
yeah, it was.
Oh.
So, and my buddy just happened to be on leave, and he came by the house to see my parents. We had joined together, but we were never together.
It's like I am listening to like a dream. You're talking like you are dreaming now, but that was one of the most severe battle line, right?
Yes.
Inje, the Hill 812 and Panmunjom area during the peace talk. And you got the Bronze Star, and you were not wounded though, but you were in a very dangerous area,
Yes.
right? What do you think about whole this thing? You didn't know anything about Korea. You returned in one piece, safe,
Yeah.
but you were in a very dangerous area. Why were you think happening to you?
Why?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, there were 3 times when I was supposed to take my squad somewhere. And at the last minute, for some reason, it was changed and somebody else went there. And the squad leader never came back. So I just felt that my fairy godmother was keeping a good eye on me.
Are you Christian?
I mean, it just...
So when you were in the front line, where do you sleep? What did you eat?
Well, we lived in a hole in the ground where there was a trench line, which you had to keep working on because the Chinese kept blowing it up. But we had bunkers, and they were a hole in the ground, and as much dirt and that you could get on the roof. So we cut down a lot of trees to get material for it. And you always never wanted to be at the bottom of the hill because when it rained, there was no place for the water to go.
Right.
And it was like living underground for a year. And I really think when I was little playing, and we'd make clubhouses and that, they were more than what we had over there.
I see.
So,
were you able to see around Korea at the time?
during the Korean War?
Yeah.
No.
You were only in Panmunjom or Hill 38 Parallel.
Yeah.
You never been back to Seoul.
We went through Seoul once. We were in the reserve, and they brought us back to Seoul. They put us on a ship, and we went up on the up north along the coast, and they would put us over the side, and they would have landing crafts, and we would go in. And if there was any fire from the islands and that where we were going, there was a cruiser sitting out there. They would open up on them, and we would turn around and come back. If there was no enemy fire, no one, we would go land, take over the island, and destroy anything that was there. And but that went on for about a week.
So, how was Seoul that you saw at the time?
I don't think there was a building standing that you couldn't touch the top of it. Seoul was in rubbles, but they had been back and forth several times through there. So.
And now it's time to talk about Korea you saw in 2008.
It was like going to Chicago with the high rises and that. Traffic was unbelievable. The Korean people were so fantastic. When we would be someplace and there would be school children there, they would all thank you, thank you, thank you. And it was just a fabulous trip. I mean, it was not the Korea that I knew, though. I mean,
what did you think about the Incheon Airport, International Airport?
We didn't see it.
Huh?
Did we?
Yeah, you landed in Incheon Airport.
Yeah. It was like being in a different country. It wasn't anything like I remembered.
Did you know that the Incheon Airport is #1 in the world?
No.
So you left Korea early December of 1952.
Yeah.
And when you left Korea, you already saw the Korea mostly completely destroyed, right?
Yeah.
And people were miserable at the time.
Yes.
And now you went back to Korea, landed in Incheon International Airport.
Yeah.
You went to Seoul.
Yeah.
When you left Korea, did you ever imagine that Korea would become like this today?
No.
Why not?
No, like I say, all I ever saw was the few people up around the DMZ, and Korea was totally destroyed. I mean, everything I saw was, even when you would come to a building that had been a farmhouse, it was destroyed. I mean, there was no building standing. It's just amazing how it's growing. And like I say, I never got, except that one trip to division, I never got more than 5 or 10 miles below the ZMZ. So my Korea memories is nothing like Korea.
What is it like now?
It's a metropolis. I mean, and every place we went, people were so nice. I mean, it was just a fantastic trip.
Gardens or, you know,
Korea, South Korea is just a little bit bigger than Indiana state,
Yeah.
okay? It's not big at all, and they don't have a drop of oil, not much natural resources, everything concentrated in North Korea. Now is do you know the rank of Korean economy in the world?
No, it,
Number 10.
number 10.
Number 10, can you believe that?
Yeah,
7th or 6th trading partner to the United States. Korea make the largest computer chips, okay? And you know Samsung and Hyundai, right?
yeah.
Yes.
The Korean people were very good at making things. You know, they used to take shell casings and make things out of it.
Huh.
In fact, they used to make, we called them an iriwa spoon.
Iriwa spoon, yes.
And we would use them to eat our sea rations in that. But they were very good at making things.
Better than the spoon you got from the supply?
Yes, it was,
Better than?
well, it was different.
Different.
Yeah.
Now I want to invite your wife Sharon
Okay.
to sit beside you. Now we have a new guest here, and could you introduce yourself, please?
I'm Sharon J. Duffy. My husband is William, and we've been married 23 years now.
23 years. Wow. You are one of the endangered species these days. Now, you went to Korea, right, with your husband?
Yes,
When was it?
2008.
2008. And did you know anything about Korea before you went to Korea?
Only that there was a war there, and a lot of people died.
Uh-huh.
I had no idea what I was going to see when I got there,
Mm-hmm.
and I was amazed at, you know, everything that we did see in the gardens and the people. You know, they were just so thankful and so wonderful. They, you know, we just toured every place, and it was just an amazing trip.
I mean, isn't it natural for Koreans to thank your husband because he fought for Korea 70 years ago? Isn't it just natural to thank?
There's a lot of people that are never thankful, but they were wonderful. They were just every place we went just made you feel very welcome. And I was really, really impressed on the children, how well behaved the school children, and that they took all the children to see all the historical things and explained to them what had happened and why it happened and what the outcome was. And the children were so well behaved, and that they just were lapping up the learning. It was just amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I was impressed with the wall they have with all the people who died. I mean, that was fantastic.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So we're going to erect a wall of remembrance in the Korean War Memorial Park in Washington, D.C. next year. So all the names of being killed in action will be inscribed in that wall. And we're going to have a big ceremony in July 27, which is the Armistice Day 2022. I hope that you can make visit to there, okay?
Oh, that would be wonderful.
Yeah. And so, Sharon, did your husband talk anything about his battle experience during the Korean War to you before you go to Korea?
Well, we've been to every state, to every single Marine Corps reunion
Yeah.
up until the pandemic hit. So every year, him and the group would get together, you know, of course myself included, and I learned a whole lot.
So you knew about it.
That
You knew about it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I was totally amazed at, you know, looking at the skyscrapers and the people that, you know, when they talked about it, and the intelligence was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And just everything there that, you know, you didn't expect it to be that way, but it was wonderful.
But William,
Yes.
So you mentioned about Korea 1950 and 2008. This is such a beautiful outcome out of your service. But why is it known as Forgotten War? Why? Should be remembered very well, right?
Yes. I have no idea why they call it that, except they...
Sharon, what do you think? Why is it forgotten?
It shouldn't have never been forgotten, and I think it should stand right up there with every war that they've ever fought.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they fought for the freedom, and from the looks of it, they've gotten it, and
Yes.
it's being shown in every day with the things that the people do there. So I don't think anything in any war should be forgotten.
There was one bad part of the trip, and that was when they brought us through the minefields up to the observation.
Uh-huh.
And the master sergeant pointed out the different things. And when he was finished, I asked him where hill, I think it was 220 was. And he said, well, that's that one that has that Chinese or North Korean outpost on. And I told him, I said, that was our hill. They tried to take it many times, and they never could.
Mm.
He said, well, the politicians straightened out the line there.
See, everything politicians do,
Yeah.
they screw things around, right?
I mean, that about ruined the trip.
Yeah, he was, yeah. When we were there, we also, is that where we went to, with the Swiss Guard?
Yes,
We actually had a luncheon with the Swiss Guard when we were there.
Uh-huh.
yeah.
And that was really, you know, something unexpected in that, but that was wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that we did, just the memories are beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're the go-between between North Korea and the Allies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, do you have a grandchildren?
Yes.
Well, I was married before when my first husband died, and I have 6 children, 11 grandchildren, and going on 9 great-grandchildren.
Mm-hmm. With him?
I had 3 boys.
Mm-hmm.
I have 2 boys, 3 grandchildren, and 5 great-grandchildren.
So do they, of all your offspring, you know, children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, do they know about your service?
Some do.
What do you think, how do you think that we can educate them about the legacy of the Korean War that you have a direct witness?
Well, I think, you know, like they say, the forgotten war, there's not that much about Korean War.
Yeah? How can we educate them then?
I don't know.
Well, I'm hoping that they put history back in the classrooms. I think that they're doing a very a very bad thing by not continuing to teach the children about the history.
Sit closer to your husband. Yes. So that's why we are doing this. You know, William is one of the Marine, very few, who has a direct witness about Korea in 1950 and 2008. Sharon, you are only few American women who can see that comparison, right? You were not in Korea in 1950, but you know from your husband, right? How was it like that?
Right.
So we are going to make this interview into curricular resources so that teachers can use. And when they hear from American grandfather William Duffy, like a neighborhood grandfather, and talking about the Korea in 1950, they will believe, right? What do you think?
I
Yeah.
hope so.
Yeah?
Yeah.
That's why we are
Sure.
doing this.
I
Okay?
think you're doing a wonderful thing.
I believe so. And that's why I am keep doing it. But, so we have 5 minutes left here. Bill, what do you think is your legacy as a Korean War veteran? What is your legacy?
Well, one of the main things at that period of time was to stop communism from taking over the world. And probably if it hadn't been in Korea, it would have been someplace else.
Yeah.
I just hope that we help the world a little.
And I hope that you feel better after this interview about those your squad teams that you lost in,
Yeah,
and we need to move ahead, but we will remember them, okay?
yeah.
Yeah. What would you say to Korean people in the context of 70-year-old anniversary? We're still technically at war.
Yeah.
What would you say to the Korean people? As a Marine Corps, 5th Regiment, okay? And the one who really fought for Korea, what would you say to them?
Just enjoy your freedom and keep it. Never let it go.
Never let it go.
Yeah.
Sharon, as a witness through your husband of the Korean War and 2008, your visit, what would you say to the Korean people?
I agree with him, just keep it up, just fight for what you need.
What would you say to the American student, young students who will learn from this interview about the Korean War? What would you say?
Don't ever call it the forgotten war.
It just learn from the past.
Yep. Beautiful. William, I want to thank you on behalf of Korean people that you fought for Korea, especially during the very difficult battle period in 1951 and 52. And you survived, but you lost your squad people. But still, that is the legacy. So I want to thank you for you.
Okay.
Thank you for your service, okay?
Thank you.
And great to have you, Sharon, with
Thank you.
us. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.